Hi guys, it's PA from the Balanced Neuro Clinic. Today I want to talk about the healing journey, which is kind of a big topic. It's kind of abstract, so I'm probably going to ramble through a few things. I have some rough notes, a few things I want to cover, and then I'm also just going to see what comes out, try to clarify my own thoughts and give you some sort of takeaway point, something that you can actually put into action to help with your own chronic health issues or pain or whatever it is, and also to help you frame your own condition within a greater journey. So I suppose the objective of this video is going to be first to define what the healing journey is and what I'm actually going to be talking about, so that you know what I'm talking about and why. Give you some food for thought on the healing journey, different ways of looking at it, different issues with it, some positives, some negatives, how to frame your own health issues within that journey, and then how to actually be productive and make the most of the journey, which is probably the most important, but we'll get to that last once you have an overview of things. So first, what is the healing journey? Essentially, it doesn't tend to apply to single, well, in this context, I'm going to say it doesn't tend to apply to single injuries. So maybe you're playing sports and you have some sort of traumatic injury and you have your rehab, and whatever, 6 months later you're back to normal. This is more in the context of chronic pain. As usual, I focus on chronic pain and chronic health issues. So the average person who comes in to see me they've had maybe 5, 6, 10, whatever years of a specific issue, but they also have a bigger story behind that. And when we get into things and when we start looking at, so once we have our framework of how the body works and what pain is and how pain comes to be, or it comes to be experienced, we understand that it's more likely that it isn't just single events that really cause chronic pain that has no clear cause. It's an accumulation of stresses and traumas that take their toll on the body, and you're left with, very gradually, with a body that's not cooperating with what you want to achieve. And these are the people who come in and they're overwhelmed. They have all sorts of issues, no answers. They've tried everything, and they're experiencing some sort of healing journey. They're maybe at the start of it, maybe they're quite a bit into it and they've tried many things and they've delved into things. But I think that inevitably, I suppose unfortunately, a lot of people will end up on this healing journey. So hopefully throughout this video I'm gonna kind of tie this into life in general, try to do that, tie it into a greater context, because again, I'm biased because I kind of see the toughest cases, the really complex stuff, as my day-to-day. So that's my bias. But what I tend to see, and what my own perception is that life seems to catch up on everyone. There's always going to be something that, whether it happens early and whether it happens at an expected time, whether it's your 70s, 80s, and things catch up to you and you just sort of call it old age. Things catch up to you, certain decisions, certain choices, maybe an inability or an unwillingness or unawareness of engaging with your health and taking control of your health, whatever it is. All of that catches up, and people have issues, and they have lifestyle issues, and they have chronic health issues that have no, they're essentially modern issues that, again, I'm not an expert on this. I'm not a doctor or a chronic health issue doctor, but as far as I know, there's an increase in just conditions that come about through poor lifestyle choices that can be treated through diet and through stress reduction and so on. And these are modern illnesses. They aren't illnesses that we arguably would have had in simpler times when we didn't sit at desks, have mortgages and so on. So, as far as I can tell, in a lot of cases, things are going to catch up to you. And what I see as well is people who are quite young and everything seems to go wrong, and they're kind of thinking, why me? And that's understandable. It's very tough to try to comprehend why this might have happened to you. And once that person has kind of dealt with um, that initial pain, that initial struggle, you want to, I would argue, you'd want to try to make something out of it, try to flip things, find the silver lining, or whatever way you want to put it. You want to find some sort of opportunity, and what I would tend to see is that, or tend to think and try to put forward, is that someone who's quite young and who's having significant health issues, that's an opportunity to become more knowledgeable about your health and to actually make the changes that are going to give you or grant you great health in the future. And I think everyone's, or the average person, is on this kind of slow decline after a certain point where and you could argue that the people who don't have significant issues at an early age are going to be worse off because they're never getting ahead of things. And what you typically see is, or what I've seen a lot of, is that a lot of people in my line of work get into this line of work because they've had their own health issues. So they are living a life, they've got no real interest in their health. I mean, they play sports, they eat well and so on, and they do all the right things to some degree, but they're never really engaged with it, and they never really know things. They do things because that's what you do, but they don't do them because that's what they know to be right. So a lot of these people, myself included, just develop health issues for different reasons, unfortunate reasons, reasons that are maybe aren't our own fault, and we come to be in this line of work because I suppose I'll speak personally about this. I had health issues from a young age, from about the age of 9, and it didn't make sense. No one could figure it out. Saw all sorts of consultants, all sorts of procedures, lab tests sent to fancy labs across the country, and nothing. And then it just kind of keeps going, and nothing, and you get on with life, but you're always just coping, you're always just managing, and you're always trying to catch up to the health issue rather than staying ahead of it and being healthy and having health in the tank that you can use to mitigate general stress. So you're always trying to catch up to the stress of life, and different issues occur, and I've touched on this in other videos, like the individual differences of someone's story or someone's condition, of why someone walks a certain way or speaks a certain way or acts a certain way or has certain symptoms, is down to these little details. So you have that initial event or group of events, and then things unfold because of the different decisions you make in life, or the decisions that are made for you, or your socioeconomic background, different things that play out because of the things you enjoy, the things you do, your friends, and so on. And it all unfolds into an individual. And I said that in the last video. You could argue that all of these different stresses and ways we cope with life are what make us individual. They're what make me the type of person that is holding up his hands now as I explain this, or whatever it is. These little character traits and habits and ways of acting. So we build up all of these things, and I think I'm kind of losing my point, but let me think. So the point being, a lot of people end up in the healthcare industry, or whatever you want to call it, because they're dealing with their own issues, and we're sort of ideally placed to see that one needs to be engaged with one's health. One needs to be active in pursuing health, in maintaining health, because the bottom line is that no one could possibly care more about your health than you. And some people will care more about your health because maybe you don't care about your health. Maybe your mother obviously is going to say, wear a coat because you'll get pneumonia and all that sort of thing, and you don't care because why would you care? But when it comes down to it, in an apocalyptic scenario, no one's going to care more about your survival, on average, more than you will care. And again, this is an extreme example. I like extreme examples. They're kind of blunt, but they illustrate points that everyone understands on some level, but they're in day-to-day life they're a bit too subtle to pick up on, so they fly under the radar. So no one's going to care about your health more than you, because you're living it on a daily basis. And back to my point of finding some sort of silver lining in having these issues early on in life, is that you are forced to see that your health has deteriorated, and hopefully sooner rather than later, if things aren't going well. Obviously the ideal scenario is that you get better and the care and treatment you get is adequate and it gets you better. But too often, again, based on my own bias and based on what I see, too often people's issues don't get better because they're going from person to person and no one's looking at the bigger picture, no one's treating the individual, no one's seeing the bigger story, everyone's focused on, at best they're focused on the pain, or they're focused on that lab result that defines you as having this condition or whatever it is, and they're focusing on that and they're not focusing on the environment, because there are a lot of reasons why they're not focusing on that. It's partially it's their training, partially it's the amount of time they have. Maybe the system is set up that they only have 5, 10, 15, maybe at most minutes with you, and they're seeing hundreds of people on a daily basis, and they're underpaid and they're underslept and underrested and underfed and underappreciated, and there's all these different things. So and this gets into another issue, and I'll get to that later, but I'll mention it here so that I don't forget, is the issue of personal responsibility. Let me make a note, personal responsibility. Because, like I said, no one can care or do as much for you as you in the grand scheme of things. Obviously, a surgeon could do, in a surgery more than you can do, but that's going to be a brief period, and that might save your life, and that's excellent, and that's brilliant. But again, in terms of lifestyle illnesses and things that just kind of grow out of nowhere and have no cause, and you're going from person to person and you don't know what's going on, and you're fed up and you're depressed and you're in pain, there's all these things that no one can control but you, and that's not, and the danger here is that it sounds like a blame game. It's not a blame game. It's just a sort of fact that needs to be confronted in a suitable scenario. So not, obviously not when you get the diagnosis of some terrible thing and you're feeling run down and the doctor comes in, it's all your fault, because it's not all your fault. There's certain things you can't control, but let's reframe this. It's not all your fault. It's you are best equipped to resolve it. You have more tools, more incentive, and more capacity to resolve the problem than anyone else. So maybe that sounds better. Well, it should sound better. So it's not that it's your fault, or maybe it is your fault, but let's not go there. It's not your fault, but going forward, the reality is that no one is better placed to make a change for your own body than you are. That made me think of something else. Yeah, I was on a course there yesterday by Phil Greenfield. I'm gonna give him a shout out in all my videos. Um, he taught a course called Breath and Bones and Gravity, and it was great. It was very good. It was all about sort of letting go and finding support in your bones and finding um, a nice balance point. This is my interpretation. I could talk about it for a while, but he used this analogy and he demonstrated this lean thing. So he would have two people lean against each other, and he used this analogy for how the body copes with stress and relationships, and yeah, basically how the body copes. And basically the idea is that if I can find, I don't have any pens, I have a ruler and a skewer. Obviously if they're leaning here, if the ruler is leaning more, that's more of a challenge on the skewer. Suppose these are people. What you want to find is some sort of balance point here where there's an equal amount of effort going both ways, but also you're not leaning in so much that if this person withdraws support that you collapse and fall down. So essentially being that we all need to be responsible for ourselves. That doesn't mean we can't seek help and guidance and rest and relief through our relationships, through the support of other people, but everyone's going through stuff. Everyone has things to deal with, and again that gets back to that everyone has their story, everyone has stuff to deal with, everyone's suffering in some way, whether you want to admit that or not, or whether you think they should or not, they are. And so to lean into someone too much, that is going to be problematic for them, and there is potentially a point where they withdraw their support and they turn you away. And if you're leaning in too much, if support is withdrawn, you can no longer recover from your weight being shifted. He used a physical analogy of people, so people leaning up against each other, and you can lean so far to a point that if that support is removed, there is no recovery. You're going to crumble and fall into a million pieces, to be dramatic. So the key is to find a point where, and he uses the analogy of a center of mass and the base of support. So we're looking at bones and gravity and how we support our own bones, and we have a base of support. But once we shift our weight outside of that base of support, if we're pushed over the edge, or if our support is removed, there's no recovery. We're going to fall or we're going to trip. So we have a base of support, which is, in this analogy, is going to be our resources, our ability to cope, and we want to stay within that, and we can lean into other people and we can get help. And obviously that's the point of what I do. It's to offer people guidance and treatment, and to physically, create change that they cannot do themselves, because I have specific skills that they don't have, and so on. But in the bigger picture, it's my goal is going to be to create or give them an opportunity where they can support themselves, and they have, first of all, enough of an awareness of their own health and what they're dealing with, and some tools to manage things so that they're able to lean into others, but they're never in such a bad condition that leads them to have to lean into someone entirely to the point of aggravating that other person. My language probably isn't the best for this analogy, but I hope you get the point. I'm kind of rambling, but point being, we need to be responsible for ourselves, but that doesn't mean that we can't rely on others, we can't seek comfort in others. But we're all dealing with things, and we're all, like I said, no one's going to care as much as you care about your health, and they, when it comes down to it, they can't. They likely can't. So next I want to talk about why it's a journey, why it's in a prolonged thing. And basically it's because it's for the entirety of your life you're surviving, you're trying to not to not die. And obviously that's fairly easy for most people. Like if you're able to eat, if you have a roof over your head, which hopefully is, well, I don't know if it's a majority of people, but I presume the majority of people who might listen to this, that's you. So it's easy enough to keep going, but we're constantly, obviously, put it this way. Today you wake up, all you want to do is eat pizza and not get out of bed and watch TV all day, and that maybe sounds great, and that's fine. But if you do that tomorrow, then maybe it's not as good, and then the third day, and then basically if you do that every single day for years, for a lifetime, you're going to slide down the scale of health, and you're likely going to have health issues for a variety of different reasons. So every day is an opportunity to either move towards something better, to stay roughly the same, to get worse, to try something different. So it's a daily thing that we're engaging in, and whether you have good health, if you have perfect health today, so yesterday you had perfect health, whatever that is, if you know, tell me. You have perfect health, you went to bed, you slept great because you've got perfect health. You wake up, you gotta keep that perfect health. You gotta make the right decisions again today, or you're gonna lose that. And that's probably not that bad, but in the small context, but then day to day, over time, things can deteriorate. So we're always trying to maintain what we have. That's why we eat every day. We burn calories, and then the next day we're hungry because we need more calories to get on with things. And that's really important. I'll talk about that in another podcast. Eating, but not for today. So it's a daily thing. It's something that we all have to do, whether we're consciously aware of it. It's something that we all do automatically. We make decisions that allow us to survive and allow us to be comfortable and keep going. But sometimes we make decisions that are not the best for us, but they're immediately more satisfying. So it's a journey. So why should you care? Well, you should care because no one's going to care as much as you. And if you are in pain, if you are having some sort of issue, you really, really should care because you're living it. You're living the downside. You're living the downside of unfortunate events that have come. But luckily, you are better situated than anyone to make a change. So it's a journey, it's a process, and this is important to understand because particularly when you have years of issues, people come in and they want to not be in pain. They want the problem solved. And we need to distinguish pain from the greater context. So we have a life, which is the greater context, that leads to pain, which is it's the thing that you're focused on. But we could also say that this life that you've lived leads to this thing here, which is maybe an unfulfilling job, or maybe it's a bad relationship, or maybe it's that you never pursued what you wanted. So we have this greater context, which is life, and it's your life, and it's colored by all of your experiences. And we have pain, and we can change pain quite easily, and this is something you probably know but maybe don't grasp, is that if you wake up in pain, it's unlikely that your pain is constant and consistent. So if it's a 7 out of 10, it's unlikely that it's a 7 out of 10 24 hours of the day, every day of the year. If it is, I mean, you should go see a doctor. But the point being is we know that the pain can change. It can get worse. It can get better. So we know that we can change that. It's not this concrete thing. And if you've been to good clinicians, you know that it can be reduced significantly and eliminated even just for an amount of time. So we know that we can do that, and we can give you painkillers, and that can do it. But this greater context that it's all occurring in is still there, and I made this analogy in the last video. Whatever it was. It was to do with, like, you go to your doctor, you've got high cholesterol, they give you a pill, and that maybe helps. If you take it once, it's not going to help that much. But even if you take it daily and you go back to the same lifestyle, you're not changing the context in which pain is manifesting, or high cholesterol is manifesting, or whatever else that you're not focused on but is also intimately tied into everything. So like I said, we focus on pain because it's really obvious. It's right there, it's frustrating, it's nagging, and it's painful, it's pain. But we don't see all these other things that are tied into it. You know, you don't play sports anymore. And I really went into this in the last video. You're not part of the team, you don't go to the gym anymore, you don't hang out with your friends as much. And these are all part of the story, and what makes this a journey, and what makes it necessary that we treat it through a journey and as a journey. Because I mean, maybe all you want is to just be out of pain and keep doing whatever destructive habits or habits that aren't the best for you. Maybe you want to do that. That's fair enough. That's your business. But hopefully, for your own sake, and if you're coming in here, because otherwise you'll waste your time, because that's what I'm interested in, and I don't want to waste your time. You're interested in addressing all of these things, so you're interested in the journey. You're ready for the journey. So let's go. How do we understand the journey? How do we see what's relevant? And that's the challenge. That's a big challenge, because we need to frame things. We tend to think in black and white terms. We tend to think this is good, this is bad. Pilates is good for back pain, CrossFit is bad, whatever. Fat is bad, coconut oil is bad, that's the big one now. But then it's good, or then it's bad. There's no nuance, there's no individualization, and that's the key. And again, these are single factors in the big picture, in your story. So I'll put it this way, we all roughly know how to be healthy on a base level, and I'll get into a lot of these different things and try to play devil's advocate for a lot of them, which should be fun. But we know we need to sleep enough, we know we need to eat well enough, we know that we need to move, whatever, be happy, have friends. But that all gets lost, or tends to get lost in everything that you've been dealing with. And then we end up in this, or we tend to end up, or I feel like we end up in, that's another thing from the course, speaking in generalizations. Try not to do it. But we might end up in a situation where we have a problem, and now we're like, what's the solution? Is it this? Is it coconut oil? Is it Pilates? Is it CrossFit? I need to know the thing. Is it that supplement? Is it this foam roller versus that foam roller? Is it this chiropractor versus that acupuncturist? And we want the black and white yes no answer, and we're not really thinking in the broader picture. We're not really thinking in the context of the healing journey. We're thinking of the pain, which is that little factor, rather than the big picture. So really what we should be asking is, first of all, say you're not active. Say part of the problem is that you're not active enough, and that you don't move enough, and that you're sitting at a desk all day. So that's one thing. You're sitting at a desk all day and you're not moving. So it's purely a kind of mechanical lens that we're looking at things. Should you do yoga? Should you do Pilates? My friend loves yoga. CrossFit changed his life. He joined Ben Dunn Gym and he's ripped now, and it's amazing, it's impressive. But why? Cool, so what? Is it right for you? And put it this way, can you see yourself doing yoga in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years? Is that something you're going to enjoy? Is that something that you genuinely want to do? This gets into habit formation and consistency. I'll get to that later, and that's a huge thing, and that'll be in terms of practical actual rather than philosophical ramblings. How do we do this? How do we engage with the healing journey properly? But so what is it? What is it that you're going to enjoy doing? Whether it's going for a hike, whether it's walking your dog, whether it's somehow you do actually enjoy going to a dimly lit, artificially lit treadmill, a row of 20 treadmills, and you're pounding, and you're watching the news, and if you like that, fair enough. But you probably don't like that, and that's okay. What do you like? How can you gain some sort of value that's beyond, again, and this is the point. You see this in everything. You see, we focus on, we get rid of all the nuance, we get rid of all the details, and we think, treadmill, if I can spend 60 minutes on a treadmill, that will solve my problem, and I just need to log those 60 minutes on that treadmill 3 times a week, and then all my problems will be resolved. And it ignores everything else that's happening around that. Maybe 60 minutes of treadmill is soul crushing and it's a waste of your time, and you're worrying, you're like, oh crap, I need to get to the gym, and I hate the gym, and maybe you don't want to get changed in the locker rooms because you're not comfortable with your body, and maybe there's no one there, and maybe everyone's better than you, and maybe it's a long drive, and maybe there's traffic, and you're fed up, and maybe you're stressed because you have other things to do that you actually want to do, or things that you need to do. And maybe all of that, or like, I could probably confidently say that all of that outweighs whatever benefit you might get from 60 minutes on that treadmill 3 times a week. So what's the point? Why isn't this obvious? I'm not the only person saying this, it's not what I'm saying, but why isn't this just the way things are done? Why aren't we saying, you have a problem, how can we make your life better? How can you be happier? How could you be more fulfilled? How can you have the things that you actually want? How could your life not be a compromise at every step? That's the question, and that's the individual, and that's for you to answer, for you to engage with and allow that to be answered, whether that needs to be drawn out of you. Just allow yourself to access that information and be open with that. So this is why, again, the analogy of cholesterol, you have high cholesterol, but really you have this life here. This life here has led to you having high cholesterol. Presumably you don't want to have high cholesterol. Similarly, this life that you have and the things that you've suffered, and they're not your fault, and it's just the way it is, it's life is suffering, they have led to you being in pain today, or you being in pain for the past whatever amount of time. What is the life here, what is the future that you can strive for, that, let's not say that where you're pain free, because maybe you don't know how to solve your pain, but where would you be happier? What would your day-to-day be where you're happier, where you're getting something out of your life? And maybe the problem is purely pain, and then we can really focus on the pain, but we'll hopefully end up with 2 distinct pictures. And again, I touched on that in the last video. In that this self-authoring program, you have something to strive for, you have what you're living now, and that's not working. You know, if you're coming into me, and again, it's a safe bet if you're coming into me with chronic pain, because again, it's not a traumatic single injury, pure chance. If you're coming in and you've got pain, no one's been able to resolve it, a few different other issues, they seem not connected, but they're probably connected. If you're coming in and this is it, then things aren't working. There's no incentive for the body to be in this state. It's more energy efficient to not be in pain and to not be complaining with aches and niggles and suboptimal hormone production and whatever. It's not in your best interest. It's not good for survival, and survival is king. So we have to grapple with that first, that we have this life that we're in, and it's causing a problem. And then we need to find the future that we want to strive for, whether that's the new job, the job that you don't hate, the friends, no longer associating with the friends that are toxic relationships, whatever it is, playing the sports you want to do, doing the activities that you want to do, allowing yourself to just be fulfilled. And these are themes I go through pretty much in every video. And I mentioned this in the last video. None of this is going to be surprising. The solution isn't going to be crazy. It's not going to be, oh yeah, we just need to pop this in here, and you're like, oh wow, I never realized. It's going to be that generally it's going to be that you need to make this change, and we need to just start to address that, and you need to find a way to enjoy this, or you need to be fulfilled in that, and you need to have the support of these people, or find support in the people that you have around you, and we need to make these changes to the way you move, and we need to get you moving better, moving more often, eating more, probably more. I'll get into that. Probably eating more, eating better, and so on. And we slowly we build up that life. What's the life where the pain doesn't occur, where I'm happy? And that's the journey. It's from here to there. And it's tough. That's the next thing. Because not only is it tough so the first reason it's tough is because, like I said, every day you wake up, even if you're perfectly healthy yesterday, you gotta earn that today. Roughly speaking. There's a reference there. It's obscure. But you have to earn that. You have to maintain that. It's you could be the best in the world at something and you retire at the top, but you never you do that once and then that's it, and you're like, no, I'm the best, even though that's a thing with the UFC. If you watch the UFC, Conor McGregor, people are saying, is he the best? He's not defending his belt and whatever. That's a tangent. But you got to, if you want to maintain that, you need to put in the work daily, and you need to make changes on that. And again, so this is our future to strive for. This is the hell that we live in, perhaps. And what are the things that we can work on, these little details, daily, over time, and that'll get into habit formation, and I'll cover that later. The next reason that it is hard is, and this is why it's really hard, is because your body is very good at protecting itself. It's very good at avoiding things that it doesn't want to address. And this is when we get quite deep into the story and into the specifics of the stories and your experiences. Because the simple way to think about it is, you have a problem, for example, you break your ankle, and you immediately, unconsciously create coping mechanisms. You shift your weight off that ankle, you limp, you go to the doctor, you get a cast, you take some painkillers, and those are obvious and they'll give you immediate relief, and then things will get better, ideally. But what tends to happen again in chronic cases, from my own perspective, you create barriers, you create walls around things that you don't want to deal with, and you work your way around that, and you build your life around that. And to sometimes to move on and to move towards this this ideal future to strive for, there is some confrontation or confronting of previous issues that needs to happen. You need to, and that gets into things like self-sabotage, and it's interesting stuff. And why don't you want to succeed, maybe, or why don't you want to do this, or why are you afraid of changing that? Is there more comfort in where you are here because it's familiar? Because while it might be unpleasant, it's actually your body's best ability to cope with what it has. So you can be certain that wherever you are now, if you're dealing with a lot of health issues, pain and whatever, that is where your body feels the safest, given the resources it has and given the environment that it's in. It's doing the best it can with what it has. And a body that's here is stressed. It just wants to survive. It just wants to avoid everything that's going to be harmful. And so to coax that into change and to try to build towards something new is going to be threatening, because you're barely coping here. You're just trying to get by, and your best effort at getting by with what you have and what the circumstances you've been dealt against. It's not about blame. It's just the way it is. The best you can do is here. It's in pain. It's hormonal imbalances, sleep issues, whatever it is, mobility issues. So to venture out of that without creating safety and without creating the right resources for change, and we'll get to that at the end, that's going to be very hard, because, well, I don't know, it should be obvious, because you always want to avoid suffering. You always want to avoid exposing the things that are most traumatic to you, and these can be very non-specific, very general kind of things, or can be very significant, distinct traumas and experiences that you just can't move past, understandably, because you're here and you've got very low resources. Everything is conspiring against you. Life is stressful. You're not sleeping enough, and it's a snowball effect, and we end up here, away from our ideal future. And that's the journey. It's the points in between. And now I suppose I'll talk about how we actually get there. And the most basic thing is consistency. So supposing we figure out everything that you need to change to get to your ideal future, or to get to a life where you're happy and you're able to keep maintaining your health and perhaps growing your health and getting better, which I think you should strive for. Supposing we know what needs to change, how do we change it? That's the tough bit. I said that in the last video. Usually the changes are fairly straightforward. What needs to happen to get you out of pain, or what needs to change to resolve the problem is fairly straightforward. It's fairly simple, but it's not easy. It's not easy because you're over here, it's safe, or it's as safe as it can be given what you have and given what you've experienced. And this, while it might sound in theory great, to get here is a huge struggle. You have to confront a lot of things. You have to move out of your comfort zone. You have to make a lot of change, and that's tough. That gets us into habit formation and consistency. The reality is that to make permanent change to the body, you need consistent input over time. So the person who has high cholesterol didn't have healthy cholesterol for his entire life, and then today woke up with high cholesterol. I don't think that's possible. We'll say it's not possible. So a lifetime of good health, no cholesterol issues, and then wakes up today and has high cholesterol. It's the healing journey. There's the journey towards poor health, the journey towards health issues, pain, and so on. What was my point? So we have then, obviously, it's poor health, health issues, pain doesn't happen overnight, again, unless it's a traumatic injury, but in a chronic pain scenario, we're generally not dealing with that. It's a deterioration over time, or an inability to cope over time, and that's slowly bringing us down to a point where the body is not able to cope, and now we have all of these issues, and it's sort of maybe seems out of nowhere because you only notice when the pain sets in. The pain is kind of that last ditch attempt at saying, stop doing this, I'm not happy, something needs to change. And usually what I see a lot is people come in and they're in pain, and you're like, has this happened, anything like that? You try to figure out, is there a cause, something obvious? Did you fall, did you trip, did you hit your head, did you strain yourself? No, nothing. No. Fair enough. So something over time, maybe a short period of time, maybe it was a week of being really run down and they don't see the connection, a tough day at work and so on, and now they're in pain. But then you could also argue that the life they were living up until that stressful week put them in a position where a stressful week could lead to pain. But point being, the major point is that it doesn't happen overnight. It's a process. Getting to a point, and this is another analogy from the course, Phil Greenfield's course. He said he sees a lot of older women who have an inability to bring their thumb back. Their thumb kind of rests here, and it's shortened here and tightened, whatever. And this doesn't happen overnight. You don't wake up, or you don't live a life with jazz hands and then suddenly wake up with this, an inability to move out of that position. So what he does, he checks every day, so you have a benchmark. But that's a tangent. Point being, it happens over time, and you don't notice it until you notice it. You don't notice it until you have to, or until the pain is there. So as much as we have a journey of healing and a journey towards health, there is a journey into a problem, and that's the story. That's your life. And what this tells us is that we realistically can't create a really significant change like that. We can create significant change in a session, in a day, in a week, to your pain, to a lot of things. But because again, it's simple. You change that, make sure you move here and do these things, eat this, make sure you go to bed at 10, whatever. You do that for a week. Great. But can you do that every day, every week, every month, every year, as much as you can, 95% of the time, to get you to this point? Can you actually make these changes? Can you get yourself to actually put in the work when, a lot of these things are going to be easy, but maybe you're not doing them. This is, I suppose, a lot of the reason why I'm thinking about this and why I've come to make this video is looking at a lot of the work of Jordan Peterson. I mentioned him in the last video, and he's a psychologist, and he talks about self-improvement and developing, into a better person. And it's hard because you're here and it's safe and it's what you're used to, and to get here you have to confront a lot of things. You have to challenge yourself, and we have no shortage of solutions. We have no shortage of yeah, just foam roll here, or just do this exercise, or take this supplement, or do that, or we just need to pop this your back into place. But and that's easy. That's easy for us as the person who is suffering, or the person who has a problem. It's easy for us to give that responsibility away, whether it's to a foam roller and say, well, I'll just spend the 5 minutes on the foam roller, and that's gonna solve the problem. And you're sort of giving off that responsibility to someone else. And again, no one could possibly care more about your health than you. So it's easy for us to go to a clinician, whatever it is. And again, in terms of the leaning analogy, that's not bad. That's okay. Obviously, you're welcome to come by. I won't turn you away. But again, in the greater context, what creates change over time, and it's consistent input over time. So it's habit formation, and it's not easy. It's about starting small with the little things that you can change. And Peterson says, change the things that are easy to change and you would actually want to have change, and wouldn't create some sort of huge disruption to your life. And then over time you're creating discipline, you're creating habits. And this is one thing another guy says, Jocko Willink, he says discipline equals freedom, because if you have the discipline to, so again, you're here, health issues, the pain, whatever, you have your ideal future. Generally so we know what needs to change. You need to eat better, do this, that, and the other, the obvious stuff, but now you actually have to do it. And here is freedom. Here is freedom from your pain, freedom from your health issues, the freedom to live the life that you want. And here is the life that you are living, and it's causing you problems. And the discipline to do all these things, to take all the steps, the right steps in the journey, that discipline equals freedom. And it's a nice phrase, because we tend to think of discipline as being disciplined, or someone disciplining you, or having to act a certain way, as a lack of freedom because you're conforming. But it's discipline over yourself, and ownership over your actions, and over your health. But again, how do we create that change? And that's habit formation. That's clearly defining what it is that we want, and acknowledging everything surrounding what we have here. So the person who has high cholesterol isn't thinking, oh, I've got high cholesterol because I've got a deficiency in cholesterol medication. They need to think bigger. They need to think, oh, well, I'm going to pause. Sorry, there was a helicopter or something. I don't know if you could hear it. But the person who has high cholesterol has to think, what is it about my life that leads to the high cholesterol? And obviously education from the doctor and from reading and so on is going to give you that answer. And again, the answer isn't going to be complicated. It's not going to be particularly surprising in general to that person. It's going to be exercise more, this, that, and the other. But we need to create that change, and that's identifying all these different things that could be better, all these little compromises in your life that you're just not too happy about, but you don't really indulge them, you don't really think about it because you don't want to think about it, and because life goes on. You still need to show up to work, you have bills to pay, you need to do things, life goes on. So it's understanding those things, and understanding who you are and what motivates you, and what is it that will get you to do those exercises. If I give you a series of exercises, what is it that's going to motivate you to actually do them, daily, so that change can actually occur over time? And that's whatever it is. It's playing with your kids, making your exercise into something that you can do with your children, or going for a walk with your dog or with someone, and setting the time to whatever. probably should have more examples of this. But the point being, it's going to be individual. It's going to be, what do you enjoy? So if you need to move more, then what sport do you enjoy doing, or whatever it is. And I would advise you to define what it is that you enjoy, what defines you, what it is that you want, what it is that you would be doing if you could do whatever you wanted. And maybe you can't do that exact thing, but maybe you can implement the changes into something that relates to that, or something that clearly gets you towards that. And it's not going to be necessarily a straight effortless line. And again, that's part of the healing journey. And maybe a quick tangent here is that a lot of certain clinics will kind of talk about the healing journey as this squiggly winding road from point A to point B, and it has setbacks and all this, and there's something potentially sinister there, because you can argue that it's a way of selling you more solutions. You know, you could come in for 10 treatments, but why not get an annual membership so that you can deal with all the setbacks in the healing journey, and you can reach there, and it all seems well and good, but it means that you're always going to be dependent on whoever's providing that solution. This is why, again, self-ownership, discipline, knowledge, giving you the information that you need to take things into control, and invest in your health, and invest the time and the interest in your health is really the key, giving you self-efficacy so that you can navigate the world, and you can go on your healing journey in line with the journey of life, and you can constantly be moving towards your ideal life and towards a better life. So the healing journey, me telling you that it's a journey and that it's going to take a while, and that it's going to take time and it's going to take effort, isn't a pitch for come in here once a week or whatever, come in for regular sessions. That's not the point, because if that's what you need, then I'm not doing my job. And if that's what you're getting from someone, you're free to do that, of course. But if they're selling you that the fact that you need that you are dependent on them, and you're fully believing that because that's what you're being told and they're the authority, then that's unethical. It's not good enough. And it's why a lot of people are on this healing journey that's really squiggly, because they have a problem and they go to this person, and the person doesn't really resolve it, but they focus on one thing, and then they eventually they leave. They try this, they try that, they try this. Like I said, the average person who comes in here has tried everything, and they're never being taught anything surrounding self-efficacy and taking things into their own hands, and being convinced that they can actually make change. That, like I said, no one can create more change than you through the decisions that you make and your choices. So a quick wrap up, I suppose. Now it's probably enough rambling. Again, I'm going to recommend the self-authoring service, just because I don't know of anything that's as systematic and is laid out for you. Obviously you need to put in the work, but it's gonna help you make sense of a lot of things. Again, we want to know the whole picture. I don't need to know it, you don't need to share it with anyone, but I think you likely need to understand it, and understand how the condition that you're presenting in with today, and maybe have been for months or years, is a result of everything. And how can we make the most out of what we've been dealt? How can we move on? How can we find some sort of silver lining and move towards our ideal? And it's a nice way, the self-authoring service is a nice way of laying that out. And it's good because you don't have to share it, you don't necessarily even have to verbalize it. You can keep it entirely private and do it at your own pace. And it takes time and it takes effort. And then I'll recommend another thing for basic habit formation, but something like that, laying out the circumstances that define you, because they will help you understand who you are. And if you understand who you are and what you want to be, you know better how to reach there. And the answer isn't going to automatically be Pilates 3 times a week. It's going to be do Pilates because you love it and because going there is great, and the center where they offer it is great, and you have a rapport with everyone, and you come in and you have your coffee and you have friends there, and the person who's teaching you is helping you grow. They're not just telling you to brace your core for 60 minutes 3 times a week or whatever they do. It's all of this, and all of this feeds into and nourishes who you are and who you want to be, and what it is that you want in life. So get to know yourself, whether that's through, again, self-authoring or talking to people and just introspection. You just write about yourself, write about your experiences, talk to your family, talk to your parents, see what they can tell you about your early childhood, your experiences, how you behaved, and whatever things that you can't really remember. Analyze the way you behave, the way you interact with people, the things that bother you, the things that you enjoy, the things that you get comfort from. And from there we can move on, because again, the solutions are going to be fairly straightforward. It's going to be, eat a bit better. Okay, great, eat better, but how can I find the time to eat better? And maybe I should go to bed earlier, and why don't I go to bed? Why do I go to bed so late? And that's because of this, and that's because of that. And then unless we have that big picture, unless we understand the environment that all of this is interacting within, then we're going to waste time, and we're going to try to force you to change something that you really don't want to change and see no value in. So that's the big thing. It's simple, not easy. And then it's habit formation. I'll link to, there's loads of stuff on habit formation, which is telling, that there's a lot of different ways of, that trying to change habits and create habits is tough, and something that people find very hard. And so a lot of people are going to have different solutions. There's one I've used that's fairly good. I'll link to. It's like a free PDF, and when you sign up, I'll link to that. And essentially it's about, again, trying to take that step back and really trying to, first of all, analyze what your goal is and really what that goal means. It's not I want to be out of pain. That's kind of a nebulous thing. It's I want to be able to go to training again. It's I want to be able to go for a walk with my wife without crippling pain or whatever. You need to be specific with your goals. They need to have some sort of purpose to you. And then you need to identify every barrier to that. And again, that's where we get into who you are and what are the circumstances that led you to being this way. Understanding your patterns, understanding what it is that you instinctively do when you're run down, when you're seeking that safety, when you're seeking that comfort of what you're familiar with. And we all have it. We all, no one's perfect. We're all, again, it's a journey. We're all working hopefully towards something better, whether that be being pain-free or whether that being, just having an overall better life. So we need to understand what are the barriers to achieving my goal. What's the thing that is going to be an issue when I wake up tomorrow that's going to prevent me from doing my mobility or whatever. And then what is the thing that's going to prevent me from actually doing my mobility over time? Maybe I don't grasp the importance of the mobility. Maybe it doesn't make any sense to me. Maybe it wasn't explained to me well enough, or maybe it doesn't relate to anything that I do. So there's a good bit of introspection, self-exploration, and I think that's going to benefit your life in general. it might be initially tough, but overall, knowing yourself better, I can't see how that would be problematic or problematic in the long run. But I think that sums it up. I'm going to link to those resources below. If you have questions, yeah, anything, comment, like, subscribe, share, tweet, whatever it is that you do. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'm probably just going to go straight into another one on nutrition, so maybe check that one out. Thanks.